it's like anything else. There's good, there's bad. You know, for some reason, whenever a pawnbroker's on television and he does something bad, he's on the news.
This morning, media outlets in the United States simultaneously reported the death of Rick Harrison, the famous star of the reality TV show Pawn Stars. According to initial reports, Harrison was found unresponsive around midnight in his cell at the Clark State Correctional Facility, and despite efforts to resuscitate him, he could not be saved. The cause of death is currently under investigation. However, the initial details have raised several suspicions. The security camera system unexpectedly stopped functioning at the exact time of the incident. The cell door was found open in an unusual manner, and security check records had been altered. The immediate question that arises is, what really happened to Rick Harrison behind bars? Was his death the inevitable consequence of the crimes that had been exposed, or was it a carefully orchestrated plot to silence him permanently? Join us as we delve into and uncover these secrets in today's video. 1. The shocking case, from investigation to conviction. Rick Harrison is not only famous for his excellent communication skills and negotiation expertise on the show Pawn Stars, but also as a symbol of the American dream. From an ordinary worker, he rose to become a media millionaire. During the peak period from 2012 to 2014, the show attracted around 5 million viewers per episode, making Rick and his family national celebrities. However, behind the interesting stories and valuable antiques, shadows began to emerge. Rumors about shady financial dealings started to surface. In 2021, an independent investigation uncovered irregularities in the accounting practices of the gold and silver pawn shop, with cash transactions exceeding 47%, above the industry average, violating federal reporting regulations. Initially, suspicions were focused on small-scale money laundering transactions. However, by the end of 2022, a human trafficking crackdown in California inadvertently exposed an underground financial network directly linked to Harrison Enterprises LLC, the company under Rick's name. The FBI quickly intervened, and through a series of money flow analyses, they discovered a complex offshore account system with transnational transactions worth over 24 million USD within 5 years, with no valid origin tracing. Further digital investigations traced encrypted conversations via secret messaging apps, showing that Rick was not only involved in money laundering, but also directly operating the illegal transportation of women and children across multiple states. The evidence collected was incredibly detailed, including video footage from hidden cameras installed in the store's warehouse, testimonies from surviving victims, and recordings of internal phone calls. When the FBI released the indictment in April 2023, the public was shocked to learn that Rick Harrison was charged with 14 serious crimes, including money laundering, human trafficking, organized financial crimes, and obstruction of justice. On June 5, 2023, at the Nevada Federal Court, Rick Harrison was sentenced to life without parole. The trial, which lasted 18 days, attracted more than 80 reporters from major newspapers such as the New York Times, Washington Post, and Reuters. Rick's image in the courtroom was no longer that of the cheerful man on TV. He sat quietly, his hands trembling, his face vacant as the judge read the verdict. "You have used your fame and resources to conceal your crimes for over a decade. Justice will not allow this to be forgotten," concluded Judge Lilia Mendez. After the verdict, Rick Harrison was transferred to Clark State Correctional Facility, a notorious prison known for violence and internal corruption. With a capacity of 2,500 inmates, but often overcrowded by more than 120%, Clark State is considered one of the worst detention facilities in the western U.S., according to a 2022 report by Prison Reform. Now, Rick's reception was met with looks of disdain and silent hatred. In the world of inmates, there is one rule that is never violated. Criminals involved with women and children are the most despised and never forgiven. Rick, facing charges of human trafficking and the exploitation of minors, was immediately labeled Chester, a nickname given to the most loathed individuals in the prison system. Sources revealed that within the first week, Rick received dozens of indirect threats. Graffiti slurs appeared outside his cell, and food was tainted with mild chemicals to cause poisoning. Rick quickly fell into complete isolation. His attempts to appeal for a transfer to a separate unit for high-profile inmates were rejected on the grounds of no immediate danger. Meanwhile, the security camera system in the DB block, where Rick was detained, recorded at least 12 malfunctions during the first month of his imprisonment. Tensions escalated daily. Security alerts were continuously ignored. New inmates were transferred to the block where Rick was being held without clear reasons. The looks, whispers, and hand-passed messages beneath the crude guise of prison life all painted a frightening picture. On the night Rick Harrison was killed, the DB block hallway cameras suddenly lost signal at 10:04 p.m., exactly when the nightly lockup took place. Electronic records showed that the door to cell D19, where Rick was housed, was not securely locked from the outside, a rare technical failure, according to prison management. At that time, 3 newly transferred inmates who had arrived within the past 48 hours had free access to the hallway. The attack occurred in less than 5 minutes. According to the forensic report, Rick was struck at the back of his head with a heavy, hard object, possibly a cloth-wrapped metal bar to reduce noise. His body bore 17 wounds of varying sizes, 3 broken ribs, a shattered jaw, and broken fingers, indicating a desperate struggle. When guards discovered the scene, Rick was unconscious, blood soaking his bed sheets. After 17 minutes of on-site resuscitation, he was declared dead at 10:48 p.m., with the official cause of death being cerebral hemorrhage and multiple organ trauma. An internal investigation was immediately launched. However, instead of clarifying the situation, things only became more ambiguous. The surveillance camera logs showed a 27-minute signal loss, but when cross-checked, the stored footage had been accidentally overwritten. The inmates involved were urgently transferred to another facility within 48 hours. The patrol records for that night were also found to have been tampered with. The times and locations of the patrols did not match the reality. 2. Life behind bars, from celebrity to prey. Some prison management staff, those on duty the night of the incident, have refused to answer questions from the press or have only issued vague statements citing internal security regulations. When questioned by a reporter from the Nevada Tribune, the prison's spokesperson simply stated, "We are conducting an internal investigation following the proper procedures and cannot provide further details." Meanwhile, an anonymous source from inside the prison confirmed to the Las Vegas Daily, "No one here believes it was an accident. Rick was deliberately murdered and people with power were involved." Suspicious signs have become more apparent. A surveillance technician who requested anonymity revealed that in order to disable the hallway camera without triggering the alarm system, high-level access is required, typically only available to shift supervisors or deputy wardens. Additionally, an independent technical analysis from private security firm Red Shield pointed out that the likelihood of a simultaneous malfunction of both the camera system and the electronic locks in the same area is extremely low, less than 0.02%, making it nearly impossible without intentional interference. Not only physical evidence, but also the chain of events following Rick's death raises many questions. All of his personal belongings, including a thick notebook he was said to have written in daily while in prison, vanished from the scene. The prison informed the family that no personal items of value were found. An explanation hard to believe given that according to internal protocols, all inmate property must be carefully inventoried after death. Rick Harrison's family, especially his son, Corey Harrison, did not accept this vague explanation. Corey quickly hired a civil rights law firm to demand the prison release all related records, including backup camera footage, patrol logs, and inventory reports. In the first press conference just 2 weeks after Rick's death, Corey declared, "My father deserved to be punished by the law, but his death is not justice. This is a clear failure of the system." Pressure from the family, the media, and human rights organizations forced the Nevada Department of Corrections to launch an independent investigation. However, the report released after 3 months was completely disappointing. No convincing evidence that prison staff violated standard procedures. The report briefly mentioned the technical system malfunction and refused to comment further on the missing property of Rick. However, major questions remain unanswered. Why was Rick Harrison, a person with a sensitive record, housed in a dangerous area without special protective measures? Why were security warnings repeatedly ignored? Who benefits from Rick's death before he had a chance to cooperate in the investigation to reduce his sentence? According to several leaked sources from his lawyers, Rick Harrison was preparing to sign a cooperation agreement with federal prosecutors before his death, ready to provide information about a large-scale human trafficking and money laundering network, far beyond what the public already knew. An internal FBI document cited by the Las Vegas Gazette described Rick as a potentially valuable asset, someone who could expose at least 7 high-profile figures in the entertainment and real estate industries in the American West. This has given further credence to the theory that Rick was killed to silence him. Security expert and former FBI agent Mark Reynolds commented, "When a person like Rick begins cooperating, especially when it involves powerful financial forces, the possibility of being eliminated in prison is very real. This is not the first time." In this context, Rick's family continues to fight for justice. Corey Harrison filed a lawsuit against the Nevada Department of Corrections seeking damages and a criminal investigation into the individuals involved. In the lawsuit, Corey's lawyers stated, "Clark State Correctional Facility was aware of the risks to Rick Harrison, but either deliberately or negligently failed to fulfill their duty to protect his life." This event has sparked a wave of criticism toward the U.S. prison system, which has long been accused of corruption, internal violence, and human rights violations. According to a 2024 report from the U.S. Department of Justice, there are over 120 deaths of inmates in prison each year attributed to unknown causes or under investigation, accounting for nearly 17% of all deaths in the federal and state prison systems. Alongside this, human rights organizations such as Human Rights Watch and the Prison Policy Initiative have called for an independent federal investigation into Rick's death, seeing it as a test of the transparency of the U.S. justice system. Although the legal battle is far from over, details about Rick's missing notebook continue to linger in the public's mind. Some investigative reporters from the Daily Beast have revealed that they contacted a former inmate at Clark State who confirmed having seen Rick writing every day, recording names, transactions, and even details of conversations within the prison. Rick knew he might not survive, the witness shared. He wrote everything down to use it as a chance to bargain for his life, but then that notebook disappeared the night Rick was killed. Based on this testimony, many experts believe the notebook could be the key to unraveling an underground network involved in international human trafficking, a network in which Rick was once a crucial link. However, to this day, despite efforts to find it, the notebook has never surfaced. Just like the truth about the night Rick died, it remains buried within the cold walls of Clark State Correctional Facility, the very place that once claimed to be the last fortress of justice, but failed to catch a perfect crime that is terrifying. 3. The prison murder conspiracy. The disappearance of the notebook, along with the increasingly leaked information from within Clark State, has sparked a multitude of theories about the true reasons behind Rick Harrison's death. It is no longer just small rumors, but big questions ready to erupt into a national scandal. Who wanted Rick Harrison dead so badly, and why did authorities allow the case to fade into oblivion so quickly? One of the most significant clues comes from a surveillance technician who was fired just 1 week after the event. In an anonymous interview with the Independent Watch, the technician claimed to have directly witnessed interference with the electronic systems on the night Rick passed away. He stated that the command to shut down the cameras had been issued from a high-level admin account just below the prison director's authority. This could prove the direct involvement of high-ranking officials, or that there is a powerful insider orchestrating everything. But the plot doesn't stop there. Independent investigators have discovered that just 24 hours after Rick's death, 3 inmates from the same block suspected in the attack were immediately transferred to a maximum security prison in Arizona, where a strict press ban on contacting inmates is enforced. Federal inmate transfers typically take between 2 to 6 weeks, but in this case, the entire process was completed in less than a day, an extremely fast speed that cannot be easily explained by administrative procedure. Under mounting public pressure, particularly after over 250,000 signatures demanding the U.S. Department of Justice intervene, an additional investigative report was released. However, instead of clarifying the matter, the report was riddled with evasive excuses. No sufficient evidence of internal collusion. The technical malfunction coincided with the timing, unable to determine the responsible party. For the first time in the history of Clark State Correctional Facility, an internal report used the phrase "unable to determine" over 70 times in a 48-page document. The story became even more tangled when investigative journalists discovered that just months before Rick was killed, Clark State had received a large grant from a non-governmental organization linked to a major real estate corporation in Las Vegas, where individuals suspected of having business ties with accomplices in the human trafficking case involving Rick were also connected. This grant, totaling over $3 million USD, did not publicly disclose its intended use, and to this day, no one knows how the funds were spent. Criminal law expert Nancy Bowers from Stanford University commented on 60 Minutes. "This is not just a case of an inmate being killed in prison. It is a textbook example of how power, money, and corruption can work together to silence anyone, even when they have been stripped of all their freedom." Meanwhile, Rick's family, under the leadership of Corey Harrison, continues to push forward with the legal battle. They filed a federal lawsuit demanding the court force Clark State to hand over all original footage from the surveillance camera system, as well as the logs from the guards working the night of the incident. In response, the prison cited national security as the reason for denying access to the documents, a justification rarely used in typical civil cases, which has led the public to further suspect that the case involves more sensitive matters than what has been revealed. At the end of November 2024, in a surprising move, Corey publicly disclosed that the family had obtained a copy of Rick's final handwritten letter, sent out just 2 days before his death. In the letter, Rick wrote, "I don't think I have much time left. They are watching my every move. If I go missing, look for the name in the notebook. I've left enough clues for you to know the truth." The rushed, scrawled writing, but full of meaning, sparked a public outcry. Who are they? And why was Rick so certain that his death had been planned in advance? The appearance of the letter led many to believe that Rick's death was not just the result of prison justice, but rather an orchestrated assassination. A criminal intelligence expert who had previously investigated similar cases in federal prisons analyzed, to eliminate a potential witness, 3 factors are needed: control of information, control of the crime scene, and quick erasure of evidence. Rick Harrison's death met all 3 of these factors. At the same time, several prisoner rights organizations have called for a new investigation, this time by an entirely independent committee with full access to all original data. Human Rights Watch also issued an official statement. If Rick Harrison's death can be so easily covered up, the safety of thousands of other prisoners, whether their crimes are minor or severe, is also at risk every day. However, despite the truth slowly coming to light, the most important question remains unanswered. Where did the notebook Rick Harrison used for his notes go? Some theories suggest the notebook was destroyed the night Rick died. Another, more chilling theory posits that the notebook is in the hands of a hidden power, ready to use it as leverage when necessary. In any case, its disappearance has left a huge void in deciphering the criminal network that Rick may have been preparing to expose. Therefore, Rick Harrison's death is not only the death of a person, but also the death of a truth that was never widely revealed. A truth about corruption, hidden deals, and the steep price paid by anyone who dares to challenge the system. 4. The mysteries surrounding Rick's death. The sudden death of Rick Harrison not only left a void in the media industry, but also created a chaotic legal, financial, and emotional mess for his family. Corey Harrison, his eldest son and longtime companion on Pawn Stars, faced an indescribable pain. The loss of his father, disgust at the revealed crimes, and anger at the way the prison system had robbed Rick of any chance to redeem himself. On the day he received the tragic news, Corey was at his home in Las Vegas. A brief cold call from a prison staff member informed him that Rick Harrison, inmate number 4700821C, had died from an undetermined accident while in custody. According to a close friend, Corey gripped the phone so tightly that his knuckles turned white, then quietly set it down without uttering a word. There were no tears, no cries, just a long, heavy silence, as if he was trying to bury the pain and prepare himself for a much more difficult battle: the search for the truth. The Harrison family held a private funeral with only around 20 close family members in attendance. There were no reporters, no former colleagues, and no familiar faces that had appeared on television with Rick. The simple casket was sealed shut. According to inside sources, Rick's body had been so badly damaged that the family could not hold an open casket viewing, which deepened the pain for those left behind. A notable absence was that of Chumley Rick's longtime friend and Pawn Stars co-star. On social media, Chumley posted a short message: "Sometimes the people we think we know turn out to be nothing but ghosts. Rest in peace. Rick." There were no accolades, no reminiscing about the good memories they shared. It seemed that for those who once cared for Rick, the truth had stripped away all the good memories of him. Immediately after the funeral, legal issues began to arise. According to archived records before his arrest, Rick Harrison had drafted a new will completely different from the previous one. This new will designated all of his assets, including properties in Las Vegas bank accounts and shares in companies, to be transferred into an offshore trust fund in the Cayman Islands under the name of an anonymous organization, Corey Harrison, who had previously been assigned 40% of the estate under the old will, was suddenly excluded entirely. Unwilling to accept this, Corey and his legal team began a lawsuit asking the Nevada court to declare the new will invalid. They argued that Rick had signed it while in a state of severe mental instability due to legal pressure and threats from shady business partners. The lawsuit led to a series of tense debates over the legality of moving assets offshore just before Rick's arrest, as well as the roles of the lawyers and accountants who had worked for him. While the legal battle over the estate remained intense, Corey did not give up on his quest for justice. He launched a large-scale media campaign with the slogan, "Justice for Rick." Justice for Rick, attracting hundreds of thousands of shares on social media platforms. Corey did not try to make Rick out to be a perfect victim. He publicly acknowledged his father's crimes, but insisted, "No one deserves to die like an animal in the darkness of a prison without protection, with no truth being revealed." Corey's persistence and his legal team's efforts forced the Nevada Department of Corrections to testify before an independent oversight committee. During the hearing, under the pressure of sharp questions from the committee members, the director of Clark State was forced to admit that on the night Rick was killed, there had been irregularities in security surveillance and failures in the procedure for checking the cell lock. However, he still firmly denied any allegations of corruption or illegal connections. At the same time, independent investigators armed with inside information managed to reconstruct part of the lost notebook's trajectory. A former prison warden revealed that just hours after Rick's death, a team of special consultants from the Department of Corrections had arrived to collect and examine the deceased inmate's property. However, there was no proper handover report, no third-party oversight, and all of Rick's personal belongings, including the notebook, disappeared from that point onward. If this testimony is accurate, then the notebook, which may have contained a list of powerful figures who had been in contact with Rick over money laundering and human trafficking activities, fell into the hands of those with a motive to permanently erase the evidence. A source from the FBI revealed to the Washington Ledger, "There is reason to believe that Rick Harrison had documented transactions with at least 3 high-profile figures in the financial world and 2 local politicians." This sparked a chilling theory that Rick did not die from a feud among prisoners, but was assassinated on the orders of an external party to protect a much larger network of power than the public could ever imagine. In the months following Rick's death, the American public was forced to confront a haunting question. If a famous television star like Rick Harrison, with a clear legal record, could be coldly eliminated like this within the justice system, then what is happening in the shadows, to the thousands of nameless prisoners? For Corey Harrison, the answer was clear. They killed him to kill the truth, and I won't let them succeed. 5. Family and the legacy left behind. The secrets Rick Harrison took to his grave were not only disturbing details about a life full of cunning schemes, they also contained clues that could have uncovered one of the largest financial crime and human trafficking networks hidden beneath the glamorous facade of Las Vegas's entertainment industry. However, with Rick's death and the mysterious disappearance of key documents, those truths seem to have been buried as well. The center of all suspicion is a notebook that Rick is believed to have written in daily while in prison. According to fellow inmates, Rick would often sit in a corner of his cell meticulously writing small pages regularly, occasionally glancing around as if afraid of being watched. One witness recalled, "He acted as though he knew there was always a target on his back. Each page was like a ticket to protect his life." According to independent journalists from the Las Vegas Dispatch, the notebook contained more than just Rick's thoughts. It also included lists of names, bank accounts, financial transactions, and even vague instructions about where crucial evidence might be hidden. A recording from a former prison guard confirmed that Rick once said, "If I die, everyone who's done business with me will pay. Everything has been documented." So where is this notebook now? There are two main theories. First, it was destroyed immediately after Rick was killed in an effort to erase all evidence. Second, and more chilling, it may now be in the hands of a powerful group of people ready to use it as a tool to manipulate and bargain in the shadows. A source who previously worked at Clark State Security revealed, "We heard a group from above flew in to inspect the detention facility just hours after the incident. There was no official report of that visit." The second theory makes Rick's death even more sinister. If true, Rick's death wasn't just an act of simple revenge, but part of a long-term plan to control information and protect powerful figures who secretly run everything, people who might fall if the truth were exposed. However, it wasn't just the notebook that disappeared. An independent inventory conducted after Rick's death also found that several legal documents related to his appeal, including correspondence with his lawyer and draft statements, had also gone missing. Federal regulations require that all legal documents of prisoners be sealed and kept for at least 5 years after their death for potential investigations or civil trials. The fact that Rick's entire file vanished within 72 hours was not only a severe violation, but also a clear indication that a cover-up campaign had been executed immediately after the event. Investigative journalists approached several of Rick's former associates now held in other prisons to gather more crucial information. One person, D, who worked for one of Rick's front companies, testified, "Rick knew he couldn't escape. He once said, 'If I get caught, I'll take down at least a dozen others with me.'" This testimony matched notes in Rick's final letter where he mentioned traces and names he had recorded. Another detail that further strengthens this theory: in the weeks leading up to his death, Rick had proactively contacted a prominent lawyer specializing in protecting federal witnesses in the Witness Protection Program. Initially, the agreement was that Rick would provide extremely sensitive information in exchange for a reduced sentence or relocation to a safer place. However, this deal was never officially signed, just days before his meeting with the FBI. Rick was dead. Criminal justice expert Michael Rowe commented on CNN. Rick Harrison may have been a criminal, but he also held cards that many powerful forces feared. A person like him, when no longer valuable in negotiations, becomes a threat that must be eliminated. When pieced together, all these details paint a grim picture. Rick Harrison did not die simply because of the hatred of fellow inmates. He died because he knew too much. In a world where truth equals death, Rick became the final victim of the power game he once thought he could control. As time passes, the case of Rick Harrison has gradually faded into obscurity, making way for new scandals and shocks. However, for those who truly followed this story from the start, one truth still lingers in the air. We have never and may never know the full truth. Perhaps somewhere in a secret vault or in the hands of a hidden force, Rick Harrison's notebook still exists, a ticking time bomb ready to explode if someone dares to dig further into the darkness that Rick lived and died in. 6. Secrets buried with Rick Harrison. The death of Rick Harrison raises a question that is difficult to answer, and one that may never have a satisfactory response. Did he truly die because of his personal mistakes, or was it because he held too many secrets, things that others could not accept, allowing to exist legally? Rick Harrison is a criminal. He was convicted for immoral acts, money laundering, human trafficking, and using his fame to cover up shady dealings under the glittering facade of a popular TV show. The evidence collected was enough to convince both the jury and the public who had once admired him that Rick had betrayed the very image he had painstakingly built. This wrongdoing is undeniable. But the harsh truth is, Rick Harrison was killed while under government supervision. And despite the government's statements, the concealment reports, and the lack of transparency in the internal investigations, it is clear that the system failed, or worse, colluded in protecting him. Rick may have paid the price with his freedom with a reasonable prison sentence, but he did not deserve to die cruelly in the dark. No one deserves such a fate. Therefore, Rick Harrison's death carries a profound meaning. It is both the consequence of personal mistakes and the result of a corrupt system, one willing to sacrifice a life to hide greater secrets. This is not only a story about justice, but also about power, collapse, and the shadows that will never see the light. Rick Harrison's case is also a painful warning about the misconceptions of modern society that fame equals morality, that being famous is a certification of character. Rick, like many other icons exposed to the public, is proof of the opposite. Fame may help conceal bad behavior for a time, but in the end, the truth always finds a way to emerge, even if the price is horrific. But even more heartbreaking, the lesson goes deeper. Not only the criminals are punished, but even those who seek to expose the truth can become victims. Rick Harrison, in the last days of his life, was no longer the predator, but the prey. He understood this, and he knew he would not live long enough to tell the whole story. The prison system failed to protect him. The justice system failed to protect the truth. And in the end, the secrets Rick kept still exist, hidden in the shadows, yet to be uncovered, yet to be judged. Rick Harrison's fall from a beloved TV face to an anonymous corpse in prison is not only his tragedy, but also the tragedy of a society that has become all too accustomed to ignoring signs of decay right under its nose. We love beautiful stories, we believe in kind faces, and when the truth emerges, we too easily accept burying it under convenient excuses. If Rick Harrison's death has any value, it is the cold reminder justice doesn't come on its own. Truth doesn't just reveal itself. And sometimes those who once shined under the spotlight must die in darkness for knowing too much about those who lit that light. In the coming years, followers of this case may forget Rick Harrison as just another name on the list of fallen stars. But for those who have examined every layer of the story, every detail, every gap in the official report, Rick Harrison will remain a symbol of something else. That in these sealed walls where power and money are exchanged through violence and silence, death is sometimes merely a tool to maintain order. And if that notebook, along with the secrets within, still exists somewhere out there, then the bomb named Rick Harrison has not truly gone silent. It is just waiting for the right moment to explode. No matter how many investigations are conducted, how many reports are written, whether those involved in Rick Harrison's case face justice or not, the truth remains simple. A man died in solitude, in blood, and silence. In a society where everything can be hidden with money, media, and power. Rick Harrison's death is not just a legal case, but a test of public morality. How will we react to injustices not just against the innocent, but even against the guilty? Those who, even after making mistakes, deserve to be treated fairly by the law and not have to face a silent death. The truth sometimes doesn't just come with justice. It needs people like Corey Harrison, not fighting out of blind love, but out of a belief that anyone, even his own father, has the right to live, be judged by the law, and have their basic human rights protected. Rick's death has illuminated cracks in the system we thought was strong. It forces each person to ask, who is the justice we trust, truly serving? Is it for the weak or only to protect the silence of the strong? One day, perhaps part of the truth will be revealed. Perhaps the mysterious notebook will be found. Perhaps the silent witnesses of today will find the courage to speak. Or perhaps everything will forever remain buried in the darkness, like thousands of secrets that have been erased by time and power. But no matter what happens, the story of Rick Harrison will always serve as a reminder in the game of power and truth. Sometimes the loser is not just the criminal. It is also the entire system that allowed the truth to die with them in the darkness, behind the walls of prison, under the weak light of a camera that has been turned off. If what we know is only the surface, how deep does the truth of Rick Harrison's death go? Leave your thoughts below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to explore secrets that have never been revealed. See you in the next stories.